On the morning of Tuesday, November 11, 2024, just after 10:00 a.m., the atmosphere at Birmingham Airport seemed entirely ordinary. It was the typical theatre of modern travel. The rhythmic thud of passport stamps, the mechanical hum of baggage belts, and the weary faces of passengers collecting their luggage. The flow of travellers continued without interruption. A sea of anonymity, where everyone is focused on their next destination. But among the routine movements of the arrivals hall, three separate stories of crime were about to collide in the public eye. These were not random acts of desperation, but calculated moves involving a mother who pulled her children into a criminal plot, a dealer whose carelessness revealed more than he intended, and a man who thought he could walk calmly through customs with a fortune in drugs. This is the story of their downfall, and how their actions exposed the darker undercurrents flowing through Britain's airports. Welcome to UK Crime Documentaries. Let us get straight into the case. On the surface, Farzana Cowzer, a 54-year-old woman from Bradford, lived the life of a typical mother and grandmother. To her neighbours and her community, she was indistinguishable from countless other women her age. She spent her days raising her family, attending to household responsibilities, and presenting the flawless image of an ordinary parent. There was nothing in her demeanour to suggest that she was anything other than a pillar of her local community. But behind that outwardly quiet existence, Cowzer was living a staggering double life. She was carefully building and directing an international drug trafficking operation valued at millions of pounds. Investigators would later describe her not merely as a participant, but as the absolute linchpin of a sophisticated network. This was a woman who had traded the quietude of grandmotherhood for the high-stakes world of organized crime, managing a pipeline that moved vast quantities of high-purity cocaine from the cartels of Mexico directly to the streets of the United Kingdom. Cowzer was far from acting alone, yet she was the gravitational center around which the entire operation spun. Evidence presented in court revealed that she was working closely with contacts overseas, including a shadowy figure referred to only as Uncle in Pakistan. This mysterious partner played a critical role in arranging the logistics of the shipments and providing the necessary underworld connections. This partnership helped her establish a system that on the surface looked like carefully timed family trips abroad. It was a perfect cover. Who would suspect a middle-aged woman and her children returning from a holiday? In reality, however, these trips were the foundation of a large-scale criminal enterprise. Her leadership was both calculated and deeply personal, blending the warmth of maternal authority with the cold pragmatism of a CEO. Unlike many organized crime figures who deliberately distanced themselves from direct family involvement to protect their kin, Cowzer did the unthinkable. She weaponized her own bloodline, viewing her family not as people to protect, but as assets to be deployed in a dangerous game. Cowzer deliberately recruited her own children into the conspiracy, a decision that transformed her home into a command center for criminality. Some of her recruits were barely out of their teenage years, effectively ending their adult lives before they had truly begun. Hamza Shafit, for example, was only 17 when the offenses took place. Still legally a minor, when the smuggling was underway, his life trajectory was altered irreversibly by the decision to obey his mother's demands. It is a chilling dynamic. Usually, parental pressure pushes a child toward education or a stable career. But here, filial piety was exploited to staff a felony operation. His siblings, ranging from their late teens to early 30s, were all given specific roles to play in this family business. Her eldest son, June Shafak, 33, took on a central role, helping coordinate travel and oversee operations. His position in the family hierarchy made him a natural extension of his mother's authority, acting as a lieutenant who ensured the ground-level work was executed flawlessly. Alongside him was Mohammed Ami Shafak, 28, who acted as a courier, entrusted with the high-risk task of handling the luggage runs and taking part in the smuggling activity. Mohammed, 22, became part of the operation at an age when most young adults are just beginning careers or settling into adult life. His role as a courier exposed him to the full legal and physical dangers of the conspiracy. The circle of devastation widened further. Cowzer's decision to draw in her daughter-in-law, Sarah Hussein, 27, proved that no one in her orbit was off limits. Rather than being shielded from the criminal side of the family, Hussein was expected to participate. Safanor, just 19 at the time, was another of the youngest members drawn directly into her mother's plan. Outside the immediate bloodline, Khalid Abdul Qawi, 36, a trusted friend of the family, was also recruited. This was not a loose arrangement. It was a structured hierarchy with Cowzer at the top, organizing movements and ensuring those beneath her followed through. The true sophistication of the conspiracy, however, lay in the way the gang engineered their airport routine to appear impeccably ordinary. On the surface, their movements mimicked those of casual travelers making short breaks to nearby European destinations. But beneath that appearance, the family's travel plans were calculated with military precision to intercept one specific stream of luggage. Flights arriving directly from Cancun, Mexico, carrying suitcases already packed with high-purity cocaine. The process began with ghost trips. Members of the group would book tickets to Dublin or Amsterdam, two popular short-haul destinations. They would travel lightly, often with no checked luggage at all. These journeys gave the impression of brief, legitimate getaways to border agents. Crucially, their return flights were deliberately timed to land at Birmingham Airport, just as a long-haul flight from Cancun was arriving. Inside the baggage hall, this timing became the cornerstone of the plan. As passengers from both flights mixed at the carousel area, a chaotic environment of reunions and tired travelers. Cowzer's couriers would move toward the belt, serving the Mexico flight. Pre-loaded suitcases packed with kilos of cocaine had been checked in at Cancun by a corrupt insider. The conspirators would simply lift the unaccompanied bags off the carousel and roll them out of the arrivals hall as though they were retrieving their own belongings from their short-haul flight. The brilliance of the method lay in its terrifying simplicity. To an untrained eye, nothing appeared suspicious. They were just passengers collecting their bags. There was no need for concealed compartments or false-bottomed cases. Instead, the risk was shifted entirely to the moment of interception, relying on the assumption that security would be looking for nervous smugglers, not a calm family returning from a weekend in Dublin. Avoiding customs scrutiny was central to the strategy. By behaving like any other returning passenger, dressed casually, and avoiding nervous gestures, the couriers counted on slipping through unnoticed. The family's ability to maintain composure was key since the entire plan rested on appearing normal. However, what they did not know was that their invisible routine had already been spotted. On the day of November 11th, officers from the National Crime Agency (NCA) and airport security teams had been quietly monitoring a group of individuals whose movements matched a suspicious pattern uncovered over several weeks of investigation. They had identified the suspects' travel anomalies, and this time, the group's every step was under the lens of a highly coordinated surveillance operation. As the long-haul flight from Cancun, Mexico arrived, members of Farzana Cowzer's group blended in with the growing crowds at the baggage claim. To the casual observer, it was just another busy morning. But from the control room, CCTV operators watched with intense focus. The footage later revealed how calmly the group positioned themselves near the Mexico carousel, waiting for bags that should not have belonged to them. Their body language was relaxed, almost bore a testament to how routine this crime had become for them. In total, 6 suitcases loaded with high-purity cocaine had been planted on the flight by their overseas contact. The group's task was straightforward: lift the cases, wheel them out, and merge back into the flow of passengers. But this time, their every move was tracked. Investigators captured clear images of each individual operating their usual procedure, securing the visual evidence that would later destroy their defense in court. For investigators, the moment of collection was the final piece of proof needed to confirm the conspiracy in action. They watched as the family members heaved the heavy luggage off the belt, unaware that the weight in their hands was about to seal their fate. CCTV footage also captured the group wheeling the heavy suitcases through the terminal doors and out onto the forecourt, blending with other passengers heading toward pickup vehicles. As they pushed trolleys and dragged bags across the pavement, their plan appeared to be working flawlessly. They reached the airport car park, likely feeling the rush of relief that comes with exiting the terminal. But that relief was short-lived. Just as the group began loading the luggage into waiting cars, National Crime Agency teams moved in. The trap snapped shut, with overwhelming force. Within moments, 6 suspects were surrounded and arrested, the mundane sounds of the car park replaced by the shouting of officers and the click of cordon handcuffs. All 6 suitcases were seized before they could leave the airport grounds. When officers opened the luggage, the scale of the operation became undeniable. Inside, investigators found an astonishing 180 kilograms of cocaine, compressed into blocks and tightly wrapped for distribution. The value of the haul was staggering. Experts calculated its wholesale worth at around £5 million, with a potential street value of £14.4 million once broken down into smaller deals. For the NCA, the bust represented not just the disruption of a single smuggling run, but the dismantling of an entire family-led trafficking pipeline. Photographs released later by the Crown Prosecution Service showed the seized packages stacked together, a stark, industrial visual of what the family had risked everything to transport. They had traded their freedom for blocks of white powder, and now the bill had come due. Now, before we move on to the sentences handed down in court for the Cowzer family, let us pause to uncover another shocking case. It is a story that stands in stark contrast to the sophisticated logistics of the Cowzer syndicate, proving that sometimes criminal empires do not fall because of a months-long surveillance operation, but because of a single, baffling mistake. In February 2016, security staff at Birmingham Airport were carrying out what seemed like a routine inspection at the departure gates. Among the passengers preparing to board a flight to Pakistan was Majid Hussein, a man who presented himself like any other traveler. He stood in line, clutching his carry-on bag, waiting for the standard checks. But when officers opened his hand luggage, they found something that instantly changed the course of his life: a wrap of heroin. The discovery was so surprising because of its sheer simplicity. Investigators later noted that Hussein had not hidden the drug inside a false compartment, nor had he tried to disguise it in elaborate packaging, or sewn it into the lining of a coat. Instead, the heroin was placed inside his carry-on bag, with an almost suicidal lack of care. That small oversight instantly exposed him to scrutiny. Airport staff raised the alarm, and Hussein was detained on the spot. What began as a minor-looking find quickly spiraled into something much larger. His behavior and the presence of heroin in his bag triggered suspicions that he was not merely a casual user, but someone with ties to a broader criminal network. Within hours, the airport incident had escalated into a full-scale investigation. The idea that such a seasoned dealer could be undone by something so basic fascinated investigators. They considered whether Hussein's confidence had turned into a toxic complacency, assuming that he was untouchable, or whether he had genuinely been sloppy in preparing for the journey. Either way, the result was the same. The wrap of heroin in his carry-on served as the loose thread that began to unravel the rest of his hidden world. This airport blunder was not just about a misplaced packet of drugs, it was the key that unlocked a much larger story. Once Hussein was detained, officers quickly secured warrants to search his home address on Nansen Road, Saltley. The raid revealed that Hussein was not a low-level courier, making a reckless mistake. He was a prominent figure in Birmingham's drug trade. During the search, officers went directly to Hussein's bedroom where they made their most disturbing discoveries. Hidden under his bed was a suitcase containing 1 kilo of heroin and 4 kilos of cocaine, estimated to have a street value of around £250,000. But drugs were only part of the picture. Inside the same property, police located an arsenal of weapons that underscored just how dangerous Hussein was. Among the finds was a semi-automatic handgun, fully capable of lethal use, alongside 27 rounds of live ammunition. Officers also uncovered a stun gun, cleverly disguised as a mobile phone, a tool designed to incapacitate without drawing immediate attention, and an air pistol. Perhaps most telling of all was the discovery of £300,000 in cash stashed away in the house. The bundled notes were a physical testament to a thriving enterprise that had been operating right under the nose of the authorities, only to be dismantled because its owner forgot to check his carry-on bag. While Majid Hussein's empire collapsed through his own carelessness, another smuggler would soon attempt a far bolder move, illustrating a different kind of criminal dynamic. the puppet and the puppet master. In November 2021, the routine rhythm of Birmingham Airport was once again disrupted when officers stopped a passenger whose calm composure masked a fortune in narcotics. The man was Mohammed Uzair Rashid, a 35-year-old from Oldham in Greater Manchester, who had just arrived on a flight from Sialkot, Pakistan, via Dubai. On the surface, Rashid looked like the definition of an ordinary traveller returning from a family visit. He moved through the terminal with a practiced ease, pushing his luggage trolley without a hint of hesitation, yet hidden in his check bags was a consignment that investigators would later describe as both staggering in size and alarming in jest: purity. Border Force officers, trained to spot the subtle micro-expressions that betray a smuggler, directed Rashid to a secondary search area. The inspection revealed that his innocent-looking suitcases contained nearly 18 kilograms of heroin, packed in multiple tightly wrapped packages. Forensic analysis confirmed that the drugs were of exceptionally high purity, between 66% and 71%. In street terms, this single haul carried an estimated value of more than £900,000. From the outset, Rashid attempted to distance himself from the evidence. Confronted with the heroin found in his luggage, his first defense was flat denial. He claimed that the bags did not belong to him, a desperate lie that quickly crumbled when checked against boarding records. When that explanation failed, he shifted his story, insisting that the packages must have been planted inside his luggage without his knowledge. However, the truth of Rashid's role became undeniable when officers examined his mobile phone. Hidden among ordinary contacts and apps were WhatsApp messages exchanged during his journey. The messages were with a contact he referred to simply as brother, a handler based in Pakistan who appeared to be monitoring Rashid's movements and offering him guidance as he passed through each stage of the trip. One particular message stood out, offering a chilling glimpse into the psychology of modern trafficking. As Rashid approached airport security, likely feeling the crushing weight of anxiety, brother reassured him with the words, "Remain tension-free. God will be generous." The phrasing was manipulative, designed to calm Rashid's nerves, so he would not give himself away with jittery behavior. In hindsight, it served as evidence of how Rashid was being managed in real time, steered like a drone from thousands of miles away. For the National Crime Agency, the phone evidence was crucial. It revealed not only Rashid's complicity but also the wider structure of a professional supply chain. This was not the act of a lone man smuggling drugs for personal gain. It was part of a carefully organized network where the generals stayed safe overseas, while the soldiers took the fall at the border. By May 2022, Rashid appeared at Birmingham Crown Court to face judgment. Faced with the overwhelming evidence of the drugs and the texts, he entered a guilty plea to the importation of Class A drugs. The plea spared him a trial, but the sentence reflected the seriousness of the crime. 9 years in prison. The message from the handler to remain tension-free had ultimately led him to a high-tension reality of life behind bars. The case of Mohammed Uzair Rashid underscored a recurring theme already evident in other Birmingham Airport busts. The promise of easy money is a mirage that evaporates the moment the handcuffs click shut. His story joined the long list of examples used by the NCA to remind others that the lure of fast cash is always outweighed by the certainty of eventual capture. But nowhere was this lesson more tragic, or more absolute, than in the final reckoning of the Bradford family who had turned drug trafficking into a domestic routine. When the Cowzer family and their associate finally stood before Birmingham Crown Court in late 2024, the atmosphere was heavy, with the weight of wasted potential. The dock, usually reserved for hardened criminals, was filled with a family unit, a mother and her children facing the consequences of a matriarch's ambition. The scale of their crimes was matched only by the severity of the sentences imposed. At the center was Farzana Cowzer, identified as the ringleader. The judge handed her a sentence of 13 years and 4 months in prison. It was a crushing blow. But perhaps the greater punishment was watching her children receive their own sentences, knowing she was the architect of their downfall. Her children each received significant custodial terms, effectively dismantling the family for the next decade. June Shafak, 33, was sentenced to 10 years and 9 months. While Muhammad Amir Shafak, 28, received 8 years and 9 months. Mohammed, 22, was handed 8 years and 1 month. The youngest, Hamza Shafak, who was just 17 at the time of the smuggling runs, was dealt with separately due to his age. By the time of the trial he had turned 18, and according to the Crown Prosecution Service his sentencing was scheduled for October 2025. Safanor, 19 at the time, was jailed for 7 years and 2 months. Even the daughter-in-law, Sarah Hussein, 27, could not escape the law's reach. She was given a 2-year sentence, suspended for 2 years. The lone non-family member, Khaled Abdul Kawi, 36, was sentenced to 10 years and 9 months in prison. The financial fallout was equally severe for Majid Hussein, the dealer caught with the single wrap of heroin. Even after his 12-year conviction, investigators from West Midlands Police continued to pursue him through a Proceeds of Crime Act hearing. In December 2017, the court concluded he had illegally benefited by hundreds of thousands of pounds. He was formally ordered to repay £295,000 within 3 months, or face an additional 3 years in prison on top of his existing sentence. It was a stark reminder that the authorities would come for both the liberty and the loot. These 3 cases, the matriarch, the careless dealer, and the directed courier, paint a grim picture of the international drug trade. While the shadowy figures known as uncle or brother remain safe overseas, counting their profits in Pakistan or Mexico, it is the families in the UK who bear the burden. They are the ones who lose their freedom, their assets, and their futures. The perfect crime at the airport remains a myth, shattered by the vigilance of officers and the unblinking eye of the CCTV camera. What do you think about these cases and the sentences each individual received? Did the mother deserve a harsher sentence for dragging her children into the underworld? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this breakdown insightful, do not forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next case on UK Crime Documentaries.